Hey Sam. So when you told me that you wanted to learn how to pray, my first thought was, hey, me too. I've been a Christian for about 12 years now, over half of my life, and more often than not, when I sit down to pray, I feel my attention going off in 1,000 different directions at once. It's really hard to pull myself back together, and most of the time I just end up feeling like, why do I even bother if I'm going to be so scatterbrained? And it doesn't help that when I think about what prayer really is, that is, like approaching the God of the universe in his throne room on his own terms, it gets kind of scary, and I just want to put everything down and leave and keep myself safe. But the fact that God is the God of the universe and that I'm not very good at prayer maybe shouldn't be as discouraging as I think it is. I mean, if God allows other people that we consider maybe more righteous or better at praying than us, into his presence, then he should allow us too. Because technically, we're all sinners, we're all imperfect, no one prays the perfect way, and if it wasn't for Christ mediating for us, we'd have no hope of approaching him anyway. So we're all on a level playing field. You, me, and people who've had 50 years of experience in like super great, awesome prayer. But that still doesn't help when you're trying to figure out where you even begin, because prayer is huge and it seems like such a big deal, and it's hard to know where to start. So I think it helps to look at the disciples and to figure out where they started in regards to prayer. The disciples came to God, or Jesus, and said, Lord, teach us how to pray. And I think it's worth noting that a lot of times in the scriptures, the disciples had some ideas that they brought to Jesus that he pretty much immediately shot down. Like when the disciples were arguing about who was going to be greatest in the kingdom of heaven, or like, hey, we want a throne on your right and left hand when you sit in heaven. And Jesus was like, no. Or the fact that they shooed little children away, and Jesus was like, no, let them come to me. Or the fact that Peter said a lot of Peter things, including, no, Lord, don't wash my feet. Or, hey, let's set up a monument after the transfiguration. And Jesus pretty much immediately was like, no, both times. So it's worth noting that when the disciples ask this question, Lord, teach us to pray, Jesus doesn't shoot them down. He doesn't reprimand them or teach them gently. Instead, he's like, yeah, absolutely. Here's how you do it. And then he leads into the Lord's Prayer, which is pretty much the most quoted and memorized and referenced prayer in the entire Bible. So, what is it about the disciples' request that made Jesus want to listen to them? Well, I think it's worth noting that they had a desire to learn, and that's a big deal. But also consider this from God's perspective. God gets a lot of requests from us every single day, and most of them, I think, are about physical things. Lord, please heal this person. Lord, please get me a new job. Lord, please fill in the blank. And whether or not he answers those questions is a matter for an entirely different video, because that's a huge issue and there's a lot of depth in it. But it's worth saying that God has a perspective that is bigger than ours, and sometimes he doesn't always answer our prayers. That's a lot of the reason why I'm afraid to come to him sometimes, because if there's anything I hate in this world, it's getting told no. I hate getting told no. And when I come and bare my heart and soul to God, and I'm really convinced that it's going to turn out well, and then he's like, actually, no, we're going to wait, then it hurts, and I get all pouty, and it takes me a while to snap back. But here's the thing about asking to learn how to pray. I'm convinced that if we come to God with an earnest desire to know and seek him, and we ask for spiritual growth, or like teaching us how to pray or teaching us how to worship, God will 100% answer that prayer, always. Because there's not a reason for him not to. You know how we preface a lot of prayers like, Lord, if it's in your will? Well, it's definitely in God's will that we know him better. It's through the entire Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, like, God wants us to come to a knowledge of him and know him better and walk closer in his path. So if we come to him and are like, hey, Lord, teach me how to pray and know you better, he's not going to be like, no, actually, I think that you knowing me is probably not the best thing for the world right now. Really? Yeah, no. So, what better way to begin your prayer journey than by starting off with a prayer that God will absolutely answer? So, that's what I recommend. Start with, Lord, teach me to pray. And then just do it. Start praying. I want to add one more thing before I quit, and that is that when you say that you want to pray better, you don't really mean that you want to pray better. You probably mean, I want to have a deeper relationship with God, or I want my prayers to be heard better, or I want to have some idea where God is calling me in my life. But saying that you pray or want to get better at prayer just because you want to be better at prayer is kind of like saying, I want to exercise so I can get better at exercise. Like if you say to people, hey, why did you take up running? People will say like, oh, I want to be able to run a marathon. I want to lose weight. I want to stay healthy and fit. It's good stress relief. They won't be like, I took up running because I want to be really, really good at running. You know, normally there's some sort of motive behind it. And I think exercise for the sake of exercise is just the same as prayer for the sake of prayer. It's unhealthy and kind of a little weird. Remember, prayer is not the end. It's a means to an end. Prayer is not God. God is God. And prayer is just a tool and a method to reach him. So keep in mind that when you start out and say, hey, I want to pray, you should be focused on what your real end goal is, which is God. And he will work with you because he's right there with you every step of the way. And he wants to know you too. So with that, good luck. I'm praying for you. And I'll see you next time.